Welcome back to yet another session. Myself, Moshmi Das. Today we shall discuss about the topic lymphatic system in humans. Children, in our last videos we have seen the structure and function of human heart. We know that human heart, it consists of 4 chambers: right auricle, left ventricle and right ventricle. We also know that heart pumps oxygenated blood from the left ventricle through a blood vessel called aorta to different parts of the body. This aorta containing oxygenated blood divides into thinner arteries, and arteries again divide into thinner arterioles, and finally the arterioles divide into finest blood vessels called blood capillaries near the tissues of our body. And throughout our body, it is made up of numerous cells and tissues, and everywhere these fine blood capillaries are found. Now, what happens, children? We also know this, that the oxygenated blood, when it comes to the blood capillaries containing nutrients along with it, it exchanges the materials with the tissues which are present near the blood capillaries. Throughout the blood capillaries, numerous tissues are present. And these tissues exchange oxygen and nutrients such as glucose with the blood present inside these capillaries. After that, what happens? The tissues produces carbon dioxide and waste material inside it. These waste material and carbon dioxide re-enters into the blood capillaries, and these blood capillaries reunite to form venules, and finally it forms veins which enter into the right auricle of the heart. What happens, children? You know, the blood, when it enters into this artery and then arterioles and then blood capillaries, it is under great pressure as the blood is coming directly from the heart. So what happens to this blood inside the blood capillaries? Let us see. Let us zoom one of the blood capillary and draw here a thick blood capillary. Blood capillary, you know that it contains blood in it. So inside this whole blood capillary, what will be there? What will be there, children? Inside this whole blood capillary, blood will be there. And blood, the liquid part of the blood, which is called plasma, will be there inside the capillary. Then, along with this liquid part, solid parts such as blood RBC, will be present. Then WBCs will be present, children, and then blood platelets will be present inside this blood capillaries. These are the solid parts. And what else is present? On the walls of these blood capillaries, throughout, small pores are present. Small pores are present throughout the walls of these blood capillaries. And just beside the blood capillary, what are present? We know that numerous tissues are present beside the blood capillaries. So, numerous tissues are present besides the blood capillaries. Now, children, what happens when blood flows under pressure inside these capillaries? The liquid part of the blood, it comes out through this pore. It just go out from the blood capillary through this pore. The liquid part of the blood. What is the liquid part of the blood called? It is called the plasma. So the plasma comes out from the blood capillary and it enters in between the tissues. In fact, the tissues then all are drenched in the blood plasma. Now, when the blood plasma comes out, what happens? in the blood plasma, you know that protein molecules are present. The bigger protein molecules cannot come out through these pores. So, plasma along with smaller molecules, protein molecules, comes out from the blood capillaries. And the other cellular elements, solid parts, the RBCs and platelets, they cannot come out through these pores. Only WBC manages to squeeze out from the blood capillary. WBCs, some of the WBCs comes out from these blood capillaries. So the liquid part, which is in between the tissues now, it is actually the blood plasma, with where the bigger molecules of proteins are absent, and along with this liquid part, some WBCs are also present. Now this liquid, it is called tissue fluid. Now it is called tissue fluid as it is in between the tissues, or extracellular fluids. Now this liquid only, children, it contains oxygen and nutrients present in the blood, because along with the liquid, oxygen also comes out and the nutrients such as glucose also comes out. And we know that tissues takes all these materials from these liquid part of the blood. So the tissues, it takes the oxygen and nutrients from this liquid part. The oxygen and nutrients enters into the tissues from the tissue fluid. Then inside the tissues, by the process of respiration, carbon dioxide is produced, and there are many nitrogenous waste materials are also produced. So those waste materials and carbon dioxide comes out from the tissues, and it mixes with the tissue fluid. Then what happens, children? These carbon dioxide and nitrogenous waste material along with the tissue fluid re-enters into the blood capillaries. And here the blood takes up the nitrogenous waste material and carbon dioxide, and it takes it into this blood capillaries, it takes it into the venules, then to the veins, and then it enters into the right auricle of the heart. So that is what happens, children. Now what happens actually, when the tissue fluid which comes out from the blood capillaries containing oxygen and nutrients, and after exchanging of material with the tissues, when the tissue fluid containing carbon dioxide and nitrogenous waste material re-enters into the blood capillaries, the amount of tissue fluid which re-enters into the capillaries, it is much less than the amount of tissue fluid which comes out from the blood capillaries. So what happens, children, that after some time, the tissue fluid starts accumulating in between the tissues. Lot of tissue fluid starts accumulating in between the tissues. Then what happens? Then the tissue fluids, when its amount becomes more, it starts compressing. The tissues, because the fluid is more, and there the tissues are floating. So the fluid starts compressing the tissues, and the tissues puffs up. It swells up. So that part of the body where this puffed up tissues are present with lot of tissue fluids, that part of the body gets fully swollen up, which is not at all desirable, because it is going to hamper the function of that part of the body, and it will be painful also, that swollen part. So we don't want this thing to happen. So what happens, children, Here, another system consisting of various channels, small, thin and thick channels arises. And that system consisting of those thin and thick channels, it is called lymphatic system. Let us see how lymphatic system arises here. In between these tissues, thin capillaries are present, and these capillaries are called lymph capillaries. These capillaries are called lymph capillaries. These capillaries, what happens? They join with one another. The capillaries join with one another. The capillaries join with one another and it forms a thicker vessels which is called lymphatic vessels. Now what happens, you see? The liquid part which is present in between the tissues, that is the tissue fluid. The tissue fluid starts entering into these channels. The extra tissue fluid which is present in between the tissues, that starts entering into these channels. Now, when the liquid enters into this lymph capillaries, then the liquid now, it is called lymph. It is called lymph. So, children, what is the difference between this lymph and the plasma of the blood? The lymph, it is a colorless connective tissue. Colorless. Why colorless, children? Because the tissue fluid here also it is colorless, and the lymph, when it enters inside the tissue fluid, enters inside the capillaries, it becomes lymph. It is also colorless because there is no RBC present. So the liquid material is colorless and it is a connective tissue, because we know that blood is a connective tissue and these tissue fluids is actually the plasma without the bigger molecules of protein. So this lymph is a connective tissue which is colorless and its composition is more or less same as that of blood plasma, except that in the lymph bigger molecules of proteins are absent. Apart from that blood plasma, what else is present in the lymph? We know that W vessels are also squeezed out from the capillaries. So apart from this blood plasma, W vessels are also present in the lymph. Now this lymph starts flowing towards the bigger vessels which is called lymphatic vessels. Now what happens, children, these lymphatic vessels containing the lymphs, at some point, some few more lymphatic vessels comes from many sides containing lymph, and it forms a nodules-like structure. It forms a nodules-like structure. And the lymph from these lymphatic vessels, from various lymphatic vessels, enters into this nodules-like structure. And from this nodules-like structure, a thick lymph vessels comes out. And the lymph flows inside. From the nodules, the lymph flows inside this thicker lymphatic vessels, which is called lymphatic duct. So, now what happens, children? This nodules-like structure, what is this called? This is called lymph node. And what is the specialty of this lymph node? It contains monocytes, lymphocytes. And you know that monocytes and lymphocytes, they are a type of WBC. Now, after the lymph enters into this lymph node, monocytes, it mixes with the monocytes and lymphocytes. And then the lymph passes inside this thicker vessels, which is called lymphatic duct. Now, what happens, children? This lymphatic duct containing the lymph, it go and joins into the main vein of the body. And the lymph which is present inside this lymphatic duct, it is poured into this main vein. So finally, what happens to the lymph? Lymph mixes with the blood present in the vein. And the vein, along with the blood and the lymph, enters into the right auricle of the heart. So what we can see, that the tissue fluid, the fluid which comes out from the blood capillaries, that it is actually the blood plasma devoid of the bigger protein molecules. Through this lymphatic system, it re-enters into the main circulatory system of the blood, and it mixes with the blood, and then it enters into the right auricle of the heart through the vein. Now, children, this is actually the lymphatic system of the body. Now, there is some very special thing happens in this lymphatic system. What happens, sometimes that these tissues are infected with bacteria. These tissues are infected in our body. Bacteria go and it infects the various parts of the body. Various parts, they are consist of tissues and cells. So the tissues and cells are infected with the bacteria. So bacteria are present in and around the cell, in and around these tissues and cells. Now, when the tissue fluid enters into the lymph, the bacteria also enters into these lymph capillaries along with the tissue fluid. Bacteria also enters in it, and these bacteria starts flowing along with the lymph. Now, this lymph, these bacteria containing lymph, it comes in this lymphatic node. Here is the function of lymphatic node. What happens? If there will be no lymphatic nodes, then what would have happened, children? The lymph containing the bacteria, if there would have been no lymphatic nodes, then the lymph containing bacteria, it would have come to this lymphatic duct, and through this lymphatic duct, it would have entered into the vein and in the main bloodstream of the body, and then finally to the heart. So that means all the blood of the body would have been infected with this bacteria, which is not at all desirable. That is why these lymphatic nodes are present. It acts as a security post. It acts as a security post. Why? Because here the barriers are present. That means those soldiers are present which will fight with the bacteria, lymphocytes and monocytes. You know that in our last video we have seen the functions of lymphocytes and monocytes. The monocytes present here, what happens? It changes into macrophages and it engulfs the bacteria by the process of phagocytosis, and it kills the bacteria present in the lymph. And the lymphocytes, it produces antibody because of the presence of these foreign particles bacteria. And these antibodies, now it mixes with the lymph, and the lymph, when it enters into the lymphatic duct, it contains antibodies with it. So the lymph node, it is killing the bacteria. It is killing the bacteria present in the blood, and in turn, it also adds antibodies to the lymph. Now, this lymph containing antibodies, it will enter into the main bloodstream through the vein, and the antibodies will mix up with the blood, and these antibodies, it will provide immunity to our body from other bacterial infections. So children, this is how the lymphatic system of human works. Children, before going to the function, let me tell you one more thing about lymphs, that there is another special lymphatic vessels present near the intestine. Near the intestine, suppose this is the intestine of the body. And you know that food particles are digested in the intestine, and the digested food, it comes out from the intestinal wall, and just outside the intestinal wall, what are present? Blood capillaries are present, and blood capillaries, the digested food enters into this blood capillaries, and the blood capillaries, you know, blood is present. So the digested food in fact enters into the blood, and blood carries the digested food to different parts of the body. But what happens, you know, children? The digested fat, means the fat which are digested inside the intestine, they cannot enter into the blood capillaries. Why? Because the pores present on the blood capillaries are too small and the fat molecules are bigger, and it cannot enter inside the blood capillaries. So, for this reason, in between this intestine, certain lymphatic vessels are present. Certain lymphatic vessels are present which are called lacteals. The lymphatic vessel present in between this intestine, it is called lacteals. And the fat, the digested fat, it comes out from the intestinal wall and it enters inside these lacteals. The lacteals, the lacteals take up the fat, digested fat, and then it comes containing the digested fat. The lacteal comes out from the intestine and joins into the lymphatic duct. And pour all the digested fat into the lymphatic duct. So the lymph now contains the liquid lymph, antibodies, and digested fat in it. And now this lymph containing all this, it will finally enter into the main bloodstream of our body through the vein. So let us recall what are the functions which are performed by this lymphatic system. The first function performed by this lymphatic system, that it removes the extracellular fluid present in between the tissues, and it just take it away, and it helps to rejoin that extracellular fluid to the main bloodstream of the body. This is the first function. It removes the extracellular fluid present in between the tissues. Second function of the lymph, the lymphocytes and monocytes present in the lymph nodes, it kills the bacteria present in the lymph and hence protects the mainstream of the blood from the infection. This is the second function of the lymph. Third function of the lymph, children, these lymphatic capillaries, they enter into those places where blood capillaries are absent. These lymphatic capillaries are present over there, but there are some places in our body, very few places, where blood capillaries are not present. But there, these lymphatic capillaries are present. So lymphatic capillaries are present means their lymph is present. So, and in the lymph, what is present? The blood plasma. Blood plasma contains what? Blood plasma contains enzymes, blood plasma contains proteins, it may contain some carbohydrate. So all these materials, these nutrients present in the lymph, it is supplied to those places where blood capillaries are absent. So this is the third function of the lymph. Fourth function of the lymph, children, it absorbs the digested fat from the intestine and it helps to rejoin in the main bloodstream of the body. So this all are the different functions of the lymphatic system of our body. Now children, concerning this lymphatic system, there are certain glands and organs present in our body. Glands such as tonsils and adenoids, these are the two glands which are present in and around the neck region of our body, which are made up of lymphatic tissues. Similarly, there are certain organs also present, which are concerned with this lymphatic system. Spleen is a type of lymphatic organ. Similarly, another organ, thymus, it is a type of lymphatic organ which is present in our body. The spleen, it is present just behind the stomach, and it is reddish brown in color, and what it does, it helps to prepare RBC in the fetus of human. Fetus means when a baby is inside mother's womb, developing inside mother's womb, it is that state of that living organism, it is called fetus. And RBCs of fetus are made in the spleen. What else is performed by the spleen? You know that RBC has a certain lifespan in our body, that is 120 days. After 120 days, the cells are killed. Now, those killed cells has to be removed from the body. So that is done by the spleen of our body. It helps to degenerate the dead RBCs from our body. Next, in case of emergency, when our body needs blood because of some blood loss, the spleen helps to supply the blood from it. Why? Because the spleen acts as a blood reservoir. Some parts of the blood are reserved in the spleen for using it in case of emergency. So these are the functions of the spleen. So children, this is all about the lymphatic system of our body. Now, I would like to tell you one more thing. That is, we have read about heart, the functions and structures of the heart. There are certain conditions of which occurs in our body because of the malfunctioning of coronary artery. Means artery which are present, which supplies blood to the heart. Because of the malfunctioning of the coronary arteries, certain disorders or conditions occurs in our body, such as palpitation, cardiac arrest, hypertension. Children, these all occur sometimes due to malfunctioning of the coronary arteries, sometimes due to eating wrong kinds of food, sometimes due to, and when we are under mental pressure or we are under very stress, then all these disorder occurs. So how we can prevent us from these disorders? We have to do regular exercises in order to keep our body fit and healthy. We have to do meditation in order to keep the cells of our body calm, and we have to avoid drinking alcohol and eating those kind of food which act as a stimulant to increase these disorders. So this is all which are present in the circulatory system of your chapter. This is the end of this chapter, children. Next video we will start with a new chapter. Thank you.